without further ado, thank you all once again for joining us this morning for Coffee and Quality. We have two incredible presenters with rich information all around the space of how we're able to utilize tech in the space of data evaluation and really strengthening our data practices. We'll have two presenters, one from PHIT, which is a UT Houston program, and then we'll also have another presenter talking about more than software, managing people and process to support database success. But before we jump in, we always know we have to go over our ground rules just to level set, making sure we're all starting from the same space of understanding this morning. So our ground rules this morning is that this is a safe space to share and learn together. We ask that you do have an open mind and an open heart this morning so that we can further engage with one another. We also ask that you participate by sharing your knowledge and your experience as we're having discussions this morning. And then, of course, ending on the fact that this is always an invitation and never an obligation for your enjoyment and your participation. And as always, a quick little plug-in and a brief commercial. If this is your first time joining us in Coffee and Quality, maybe it's your third, fourth, fifth time, and you just haven't hit the moment to actually join our team's channel just yet, this is a brief reminder that if you're interested in getting more information about what we're doing in and around the space of Coffee and Quality, go ahead and share your email in the chat. Jessica or myself will catch it, and we'll be sure to add you to our official team's channel where you can stay up to date on all the goodness and the growings of Coffee and Quality. So now with that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and get started with our very first presentation, which is all around gaining equity and training for public health informatics and technology, and for short known as PHIT, by Michelle Santon over at UT Houston.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Ashley, for that. I will begin to share my screen. Can everyone see?
Yes.
All
You're all
right.
set.
Perfect. So as Ashley mentioned, PHIT stands for Gaining Equity and Training for Public Health Informatics and Technology. We are at the UTHealth Houston School of Public Health in collaboration with the School of Biomedical Informatics. We received a grant from ONC, the Office of the National Coordinator, to create a pipeline in Texas to grow public health informatics and technology workforce. After COVID, they realized that there was all this data with no one to manage it. And so with that, we are recruiting students from all over the state of Texas to gain more knowledge in this field. And also we're working to expand the number of public health professionals and training them as well in public health informatics and technology. So our goal with the ONC, with our grant, was to train 1,400 students through boot camps and internships, as well as 500 public health professionals. And then within that, the 400 students would receive a paid internship within health departments, nonprofits, hospitals, health systems. And I am proud to share that we've already reached our 1,900 goal as of last month. So we are very excited about that. And we are looking forward to what will happen in the next year to come. Just to give you a little synopsis of what we've done so far with the paid internships. The program started in 2021, with 2022 being our pilot year. Again, our goal is 400 internships. And so far to date, we've placed 233 students. And so for fall of 2024 through summer of 2025, we anticipate that we will overreach the 400 mark with internships. So just to tell you a little bit about the internship process, it is 160 hours part-time in the spring and fall semesters. It's 12 weeks the interns would be placed at the organization. And in the summer, it would be 10 weeks. Students receive a paid stipend through UTHealth, through the grant. So there's no exchange of funds between you and the student. We are recruiting undergraduate and graduate students from all of our Get Fit partner institutions. And I will share that the students also are placed in boot camps, which are 2 weeks, and they receive didactic lessons, and also will present at the end of the program a project that they've learned during those 2 weeks. And then we have graduate certificate students, and those may also take approved courses of study to participate. Additionally, the internship may be remote, in person, or hybrid. As we know, they're from all over the state of Texas. So we are trying to all get them placed in different locations. And I just wanted to share how we determine the stipend amount for the students. If they're an undergraduate student, it is a flat base pay of $2,440. If they're a recent graduate or a graduate student, it will be based on their status in their program. And then here, I wanted to share a list of all of the academic institutions who are a part of the Get Fit Consortium. We have Houston Tillotson, UTRGV, Prairie View A&M University, the University of Texas Permian Basin, El Paso, UT Tyler, Texas A&M International, and UT Arlington, as well as Texas Tech University Health Sciences Center. So we've covered the entire state. Student eligibility and requirements. Again, they must attend a Get Fit affiliated university and must be studying for a related degree in public health, data science, health science, computer science. They must have completed a Get Fit boot camp or have an equivalent course or program study. Our team, once the student applies, our team reviews applications to ensure that they meet the eligibility requirements, and as well are aligned with what the organization is seeking in an intern. We do ask that they have a GPA of 3.0 or above. They will submit a transcript, a letter of recommendation, a resume, and then a written statement of their intent, their interest in this program. Once the organization is identified of a match, we will send the student's resume to you. Just know that it was reviewed, their application was reviewed by our team, and then we're sending it to you for a second review and giving the organization an opportunity to meet with the student and do an interview as well, if they would like. The Get Fit application process. So to become a host site, to host an intern, we ask that you complete a letter of affiliation agreement. I'm sorry, my screen is doing what it wants to do. And then once the letter of affiliation agreement has been executed, we have a site assessment that is completed and submitted. The site assessment will let us know what you're looking for, the skill sets that you're looking for, how many interns you can accommodate, the capacity to host, the modality, if you're interested in a remote intern or an in-person intern hybrid. Once we receive that site assessment, we review applications, and then we match students based on their skills and then what the site is requesting. And then from there, we place the students in the internship. Here's a list of our current host sites. And as you can see, we're again across the state. We have agreements with just about most of the health departments in Texas, and that list is growing. And then also nonprofits and health systems throughout the state. And just recently, United Way of Greater Houston has been added to our list. Awesome. So as a host site, what are your expectations to host a student? We would like for the site to identify a supervisor or mentor that will provide oversight during the student's internship. And then we would need a main point of contact. And this may be, different from who the mentor will be. We ask that you review the students before accepting, and then, let us know if anything changes. And then also, ensure that the executed agreement is in place before proceeding. Things to consider: that this is a learning opportunity. Many times this is the student's first time being in a professional environment. So we ask that, just know that the students may not be experts in the field, but they are learning. And then also in that site assessment, you can indicate, if you would like a beginner student or intermediate or advanced level. We want to foster a learning environment where students can gain skills. Keep in mind that projects should be kept general if possible, and that ensure that the skill level reflect the wide variety of the student's skills. And a lot of this may be covered when you are meeting with the student in that initial interview, introductory meeting, to just kind of determine what is expected, what the student is expecting as well. Here are some possible project tasks as a host site if you're hosting a student based on their academic level. And this is just general information, what we've gathered from other host sites. For students that are undergraduates, basic skills, project tasks may be data cleaning, database development, data collection. And then for graduate students, a little bit more advanced, they may create dashboards, data visualization, analysis, and so forth. And I just wanted to share some of the demographics of the students that we've placed thus far, male versus female, and other that prefer not to say their gender, the race breakdown, ethnicity. And again, this project is based on recruiting students from underrepresented groups to hopefully grow the workforce in public health informatics. And then here is just a list of some of the student participation by majors, students who have completed the internship. So we also provide a pre and post internship survey for the students as well as the host sites. And so this is just some data from the students that we've gathered that, this is their first public health related internship, 74%. 78% said they received mentors from those representing underrepresented groups. And then 77% had remote internships. Skills gained: project management, communication, data visualization, and analysis were the top skills. And then here we ask, how prepared do you feel to go out into the public health informatics workforce? As you can see, 52%, 52.5% said somewhat prepared, and then about almost 25% was very prepared after completing the internship. So as sites, we also send that out. And then here's some information, some feedback from our host sites. 89% rated students' competency level in public health informatics to be good to high. 89% said they would be likely to hire the student if positions were available, and we totally understand that. And then 99% said that the students were prepared to go into the workforce following the internship. This is some examples I wanted to share of projects that have been completed by the students from different house sites. And as you can see, it is a wide array of projects, updating and editing the host size data dictionary and statistical processes. A student did a cancer incidence and mortality rates for Texas, synthesizing from multiple databases into one location and preparing Texas-specific maps. So it definitely, the projects could range from what the students could help produce in the internship. Okay. Lessons learned. So we always would like feedback. You know, how can we make this program? How can we improve this program? And so a few things that we identified was being intentional about addressing and rectifying imposter syndrome. Like I said, a lot of times this is the first opportunity students are placed in a professional setting. So there is definitely imposter syndrome going around. So we want to make sure that, you know, we rectify that when we're working with the students. We also want to prepare host sites by managing their expectations of the student skill level. Assisting students on displaying, sharing new skills on gained through LinkedIn. We have a LinkedIn workshop that we offer them so that they can market themselves with the skills that they've learned through Get Fit. And then we also have conferences where students can present posters and share projects that they've completed. And then we want to allow host sites to connect and convene to share best practices. We do host a Get Fit host site info session where sites can come together. They can talk about what's worked for them, what's not working, ask questions. And so we want to make sure that we continue that collaboration moving forward. So what happens after Get Fit? I mentioned that the project was 5 years, 2021 through 2025. So our last semester will be summer of 2025, but there is an opportunity to continue hosting students. I also work in the practicum office at the School of Public Health, where all of our graduate students are required to complete a practicum as part of their course requirement. We have campuses in Houston, Austin, Brownsville, Dallas, El Paso, and San Antonio. Students are required to complete 180 contact hours. What's different from practicum and Get Fit and the internship is that the internship is paid. The practicum is not, but the students receive a grade from the practicum experience. Also, they are required to develop 2 practical, high-quality, non-academic tangible products. And then you would be a part of their practicum team where you would mentor and guide the student, and then also help and aid, you know, in giving that student a grade for that practicum product. And then also you have the opportunity to post positions or opportunities on Handshake, where you may have access to all graduate or doctoral, postdoctoral students if you have positions open up or opportunities where you would need student. Excuse me, just a second, sorry. All right, and so I mentioned about the professional development, and then our summit that's coming up next month, September 19th. Feel free, if you're interested in attending, it will be at the UT of Texas at Arlington. And then we also have professional development, those courses where we're training 500 professionals. And those courses can range anywhere from health equity to intro to public health informatics, health data science, public health informatics. If you are interested in those courses, you will receive CEUs. And it's just an opportunity for you to refresh your foundation in public health informatics and knowledge. And those are free until September 2025. And then also the summit is free as well. And I can drop those links in the chat after this presentation. Staying connected with our team. I mentioned that we give post surveys, midway surveys to just kind of see how's it going, what can we do to help along the way. We have a a Get Fit internship email box that you're welcome to send general questions to. I'm always available. And then we do have a mailing list where we send out newsletters, updates, information, what's going on within Get Fit. And so this is our team. Again, my name is Michelle Stanton. We have several members that are a part of our team at the School of Public Health. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you all so much. Are there any questions?
I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, but what an amazing opportunity. What an incredible program, Michelle. I know Jessica and I have been talking about this honestly for a few months now. So I'm very excited and happy that we were able to kind of have an opportunity for you to present out to this group. And I know speaking from just my own experience as someone who got my first job out of a practicum experience, like it's just extremely beneficial to give that opportunity to young people to grow and learn and be in an environment that fosters that learning and growth as well. So if there aren't any questions right now, Michelle will stay on until the end of the call. So if anything comes to mind, please feel free to write it down or even put it in the chat box. And then we'll also have a proper time for Q&A at the very end as well. But just for me personally, thank you so much, Michelle. I know you're getting a couple of comments in the chat as well about just speaking to how amazing this program is as well. There is a request if you could add your email or maybe the general email as well so people can get in contact with you further. Oh, that's lovely to hear. And then Monica is also speaking their own testament from Prevent Blindness Texas of working with this program too. So you're getting a lot of love, a lot of love. But at this time, I will go ahead and reshare my screen and we will pick up where we left off. And jump right into our next presentation. Oop, give me just a second. Okay, so our next presentation is more than software, all about managing people and process to support database success. And this is coming to us by Jessica Buek. And just to share a little bit about Jessica, she has over 20 years of experience in the nonprofit human services sector in St. Louis. She began her career as a family therapist serving at-risk youth and families in home-based services before moving into program management and quality improvement. In her roles within nonprofit organizations, she has been responsible for program design, evaluation, and improvement. As a consultant and founder, she has trained, coached, and supported dozens of organizations in their efforts to design and implement effective programs, robust performance management systems, data collection tools and software, and quality improvement tools and process, along with cultures of learning and improvement. Furthermore, Ms. Buek is an adjunct faculty at the Brown School of Social Work at Washington University, where she teaches project management, continuous quality improvement, and program evaluation in the MSW, MPH, and professional development programs. In addition to her master's in social work, Ms. Buek has earned her graduate certificate in nonprofit management and program evaluation from Webster University and Michigan State University, alongside a certificate in nonprofit board consulting from BoardSource. Let's give a massive coffee and quality welcome to Sarah Buek, and I'll go ahead and transition over so you can go ahead and share as well.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks so much for having me. Let me get my slide up and going here, and we'll get into it. Nope. That's okay. Okay. Hopefully you guys are seeing the slides and not the presenter view. Is that right?
Yep, you're
Okay,
good.
Good. Thanks so much for having me. That was a thorough introduction. So the only thing that I'll add is I'm from Houston, Cypress Creek, class of 1999. So glad to be back with people who know how to properly use words like y'all and fixin' to. So I'm back amongst my people. So glad to be with you today. In 2016, I founded my consulting firm, the IllumiLab, and our mission is to empower and equip change makers like yourselves to plan thoughtfully, design intentionally, work efficiently, and learn continuously. And databases are a really important part of that. If I can, either by a show of actual hands or virtual hands, I'm just curious, How many of you have some responsibility in your organization for managing a database of some kind? Okay, I'm seeing a decent number of hands. Okay, great. So that's what we're talking about today in the broadest sense. So for those of you who aren't managing a database or designing them, I want to touch base first on what I mean when I use the word, and then share with you some common pain points that I hear from a lot of my clients. One of our service areas is data strategy. So we help nonprofits identify their data management needs. So for data collection, management, and reporting, and then we can often help them shop for, select, design, and implement data solutions. And so organizations reach out to us all of the time saying, we need a new database. And after doing a number of projects like this over the years, I've realized I'm not sure they always do need a new database. Not sure that's always the problem. So we'll talk about what some of those common pain points are and what we have learned are the true keys to success above and beyond the software itself, which are plans, processes, and people. So my hope is that by the end of our brief time together this morning, you'll be able to more accurately diagnose your organization's database challenges and identify some non-software related solutions. So we don't have time to get into all of the nuts and bolts this morning, but I'm hoping I can just kind of increase awareness, kind of broaden your perspective when you're problem solving in your organizations. So quick level setting the team. When I say database, I'm talking about an electronically stored systematic collection of data. And that data can be words, numbers, images, any kind of information truly. And I'm talking primarily this morning about relational databases. So these are collections of data that are organized into tables with defined relationships between them. So some common databases that I know nonprofits use, CRMs or donor management systems or case management systems. And for those of you who are not managing databases or perhaps haven't ever designed one, I will quickly try to explain a little bit about what I mean by a relational database. If you think about a flat file database first, an Excel spreadsheet or a Google Sheet, it's all in one file. You have columns and you have rows. Each row is a new record and each column is a new piece of information. And in flat file databases, the more information you want to collect, the wider and wider and wider your spreadsheet gets. And then oftentimes you have different people interacting with some of the same information, but they each need something a little bit different. So program A has their spreadsheet, program B has their spreadsheet, and the training and intake department have their spreadsheet, but the same information is living in multiple spreadsheets. You've got date of birth, you've got ID number, you've got address, I've got address. Whose address is the updated one? So a relational database takes the objects about which you collect data and puts all of the data about that object in a table, and then it creates relationships between them. So for example, an object in database language could be a client. And in that client table, we collect name, date of birth, race, ethnicity, ID number, etc. Another object might be the case manager who's serving those clients. And in that table, you might have the case manager's name, email address. You might also keep information about their degree, their credentials, their training. And then you create a relationship between a client record and a case manager record to know that they've been assigned to each other to create caseloads. And then within the client record and the services you're providing to the client, you have case notes. Well, we don't want to put all the case notes in the client's record. So we have a table of case notes and we link the case note record to the client record and to the case manager record. So that's what I mean when I'm talking about a relational database. And that'll come up in a second when we're talking about some tips around database design. So I'm talking mostly about databases today that are relational and not flat files. So common pain points that I hear from organizations when they pick up the phone and call us and say, we need a new database. They say our data entry processes are too complicated or time consuming. There's just too many clicks. I have to go to too many screens. I'm putting the same information in multiple places. We don't trust the data in our system. It's incomplete, it's inaccurate, it's out of date. I could run a report from this system, but I don't think it's right. So we keep a spreadsheet on the side, right? Any of you have spreadsheets on the side? Your staff are creating workarounds. I don't like the database. I don't know how to use the database. So I put everything over here in my secret little spreadsheet. Organizations often also say that we can't run the reports that we need. You know, our vendor built this report for us, but it doesn't show us the data the way we need to see it. We also hear organizations say, well, we've reconfigured the system so much our data is a mess. We added this field, we discontinued that field, we added this new form, but we never moved the data from this form to this form. And then finally, we often hear organizations saying we can't see the data the way that we need to. They're talking about their dashboards or summaries. A lot of the time when organizations reach out to us with these pain points, we find after conducting our discovery processes that the problem is usually not the software. The problem is more than likely they're planning their processes with their people. Sometimes it's about the software. The software just doesn't have the features or functions or capabilities that they need. But more often than not, that's not the case. And so rather than throwing the baby out with the bathwater, making a huge financial investment, taking on a huge project to migrate data and set up a new system, I encourage organizations to take some time and reflect on these components: their planning, their processes, and their people. In my experience, these are the keys to successful database management and implementation. So when I'm talking about planning, I'm talking about all of the thinking that you need to do before you select a database, before you launch a database. Oftentimes organizations will reach out to us and say, we need a new database. Our contract with our current vendor expires in 3 months. That is not enough time to do all of the planning you need to do to set yourself up for success in a new system. I would advise at least a year, because to set your database up for success, it really starts with program design and evaluation planning. So a lot of organizations blame their software, but the problem is often much further upstream. So we'll talk about what I recommend as steps in a planning process. Also, we see that organizations' processes or their workflows are really key to their success in any data system. The clarity and stability of those processes, how well they're integrated with the workflow in the software, and then how well they're implemented and overseen. And then lastly, and probably most importantly, organizations rarely dedicate enough human resources to launching and managing and maintaining a database well. There needs to be a dedicated system manager, staff and users need to be trained, someone needs to be overseeing the data and how people are using the system, but also someone needs to be actively cultivating the culture and attitudes that will set up your system for success. And so those of you who are in quality improvement, learning, and research positions, you're probably already trying to create an appetite for data and trying to create evaluative thinking and curiosity and learning and improvement cultures in your organization. And the same is true around database management in our experience. So I'm going to talk through each one of these briefly, and feel free to unmute and pop in with a question or type a question in the chat. There's a lot of you and I can't monitor the chat, but maybe Ashley will help me with that, or we can address questions at the end. So I really think that organizations underestimate the importance of the clarity of their program design when it comes to data management. This is one of the things I say a lot. You cannot measure what you have not defined, and you should not measure what you have not designed. And by that, I mean your program design needs to be stable and clear and ideally documented in order for you to know what data you need to collect and what workflows the system needs to support. A lot of times when we sit down with organizations to help them identify their data management needs, there are too many unanswered questions that all go back to, well, how often do we implement this? Does everybody participate in this? Is this a group intervention? Is this an individual intervention? What do we need to document about this service? Questions like that will completely stymie your database design process if you haven't answered them first. And those are things that a vendor cannot help you answer. So these are ducks that you need to have in a row before you start shopping. So I encourage you to ask and answer the question, are the activities about which we want to collect data clearly defined and consistently implemented? If your program is not quite stable, and sometimes we do it this way and sometimes we do it that way, to try to design a database that supports a choose your own adventure implementation will be really challenging. Second, we think organizations need to give a little more attention to their evaluation planning. And this goes back to the first part of my mantra, which is that you cannot measure what you have not defined. If evaluation for a program is still in the development stage, if it's still a moving target, if you're still trying to figure out exactly what your indicators are, it can be really hard to design and manage a good database. And I encourage organizations for programs that are in a pilot phase, for programs that are in a developmental phase, if you haven't fully established your outcomes and your indicators and your measurement tools, I encourage you to start with the simplest and most flexible data management tool before you invest in building a database. Because if things are still being tweaked and adjusted and moved, do that in some spreadsheets before you build it in your database. Because taking apart a database and putting it back together creates a lot of work the longer a program's been in operation. So I encourage organizations to ask themselves, have we defined the success of our activities in meaningful and measurable terms? What questions do we want and need to be able to answer with our data? That is, what do our external stakeholders require us to report, and what do we need to monitor for our own learning and improvement purposes? And what data will help us answer those questions? Oftentimes, organizations build their databases around what needs to go in instead of building the database around what needs to come out. And oftentimes when they shop for a database, they get on a phone with a vendor and they say, can it do this? Can it do this? Can it do this? And of course, the vendors can say, yes, it can. Yes, it can. Of course it can. But you need to tell them what you need to get out of it and how you need to be able to see your data, because then they'll know how to create the relationships between those tables that you need so that you can generate the reports that you need. Also, things to consider that will also help you in building your reports is, what are your numerators and denominators when you're calculating your outcomes? That is, who needs to be included in a measure? What's the denominator in your percentage of who achieved? Are we measuring all the people who are enrolled, or are we only measuring the people who had 5 sessions or 8 sessions? Are we including all the people who ever participated, or are we only including people who had certain risk factors? Knowing how you need to slice and dice your data, again, will help you design your system well. I haven't come up with the best name for this, so I just call it data strategy. But one of the things that I've found oftentimes is organizations will have 1 or 2 rather robust data systems. They might have a CRM that they're using for donors and volunteers, and then they have a case management system that they're using for their services. And sometimes they have some multifunctional systems that need to interact and talk with each other. Unfortunately, there's usually a program director that picks and designs the case management system. And then there's a finance person who picks and designs the accounting system. And there's a development person who picks and designs the donor management system. But there isn't anyone in the organization who's looking at the cross-functional and interdepartmental data strategy of the organization and trying to sew all those pieces together. We recently worked with a relatively small early childhood education center, and one of their key functions that they relied on their data systems for was sending families invoices for tuition. But that was a process that the program director needed to touch, and that the finance office needed to touch, and that the enrollment officer needed to touch. But when they designed it, they only talked to the finance people. So the people in the other department who needed to use that data and interact with that data were creating their own little offline workarounds because they were never involved in thinking about what that process needs to be and where that data needs to live and how we need to interact with it. So I really encourage organizations to have one person on your team who has a bird's eye view of organizational data needs and the relationships among those data so that you can weave together your different systems and your data in the most efficient ways possible so that people aren't just working with their data in silos. And then we get to the database design. So usually vendors will take the lead on this. They have their own discovery process. They have you fill out some templates and some worksheets. Again, they often design these processes around how you want the data to go in. Send us your paper forms and we'll build an electronic form that mirrors it. It really needs to be built around, though, how you plan to use the data and who the users of the data are. How do you want to use this data for decision making and for planning? That tells you what needs to be on your dashboards. What do you need in order to manage your program, manage your staff, manage your caseloads? What are your workflows? First, we do this, then we do this. If this, then that. If this, then that. You need to really be clear on what those workflows are, because oftentimes you can build a database to support the workflows. But again, if everybody never does it the same way twice, and it's a choose your own adventure scenario, your database is going to be a mess. But thinking through all of these factors, your evaluation and learning questions, your workflows, management needs, you can identify the relationships or connections that you need to make among your data. So in a relational database, which tables need to interact with each other? Which data need to be in their own tables? If you guys do this work and can communicate it to your software vendors, they can design something that will suit your needs so that you can get the reports that you need. I recently worked with a rather large organization that's been around for 80 years, has 5 or 6 departments, 12 different programs, and they reached out and they said, we need a new database. But I knew what database they were using, and I had known their previous directors of evaluation, and I knew that the database was not the problem. I knew it. And so we did a really thorough discovery process, and essentially this is what we found. We found that their programs, definitions and processes weren't as clear as they needed to be. Staff had never been trained on the system. There wasn't anyone who had the bird's eye view agency-wide. And they were prepared to make, $100,000 investment in a new system when the software had all the capabilities that they needed. So a lot of this goes back to good planning. I also encourage organizations to give serious thought about the resources necessary for managing and maintaining the system. And this goes beyond just a dedicated database manager. You can't just have one super user or one manager in your organization and expect that knowledge to transfer. We want your database to get integrated into data practice across departments, across teams. We want this to become a valuable tool that supports people's work and service delivery. We don't want it to be like, oh, I do my services, I do the work that I'm here to do, and then I come back to my desk later and I enter a bunch of data because I have to do it for research and learning, and I hate the system, and where's my cheat sheet with my click, click, click instructions? So you want to make sure that you have adequate resources in terms of expertise, time, and funds to manage the system. And make sure that the person that's deputized with managing the system has the authority and also the social capital within your organization that they need to set the system up for success. Oftentimes, I find that the person who's the designated database manager, or as some of you might be, the director of evaluation and learning, you're often a peer with program directors. You're not their bosses. You can't tell them what to do. You can't enforce evaluation plans or strategies. And so you're doing a lot of managing up and managing side to side. And that can be a really difficult position to be in if you're in charge of managing a database and managing data quality. So I really encourage folks in those positions to advocate for themselves to their superiors and with their colleagues to make sure that they have, if not the formal authority, then at least the credibility and respect that they need to manage their peers. So that's all the stuff that goes into the planning up front, which is why I say you can't rush into a new database in just 3 months. But also your organizations or your programs or your department's processes are really key to the success of any data system. I encourage organizations when they are shopping for or designing a new system to ask themselves, what are the ideal workflows in which data should be captured and entered, so that we can increase the odds that data will be entered correctly, completely, and regularly. I will often include a process mapping training and process mapping exercise and homework as part of a data strategy project, so that teams, departments, programs have to sit down and what is the intake process? What is the enrollment process? What is your discharge process? What is your service delivery process or protocol? So that I, as a database manager and evaluator, can identify the points at which data need to be collected, at which they need to be viewed and exported, and et cetera. And if those processes are unclear, your database design will be really tricky. So I always say that no system can mirror your processes. A lot of organizations get really excited about the idea of a database just using automated workflows to just push their staff through the designated process and force them to enter all the data they need to. And many systems have that capability, but they can never fully and completely and exactly mirror your processes. So I encourage organizations before they start moving into a system to map, evaluate, and improve their existing processes and look for ways to integrate them with the software. And that might mean that you change the order of steps. Oh, to make this work in the system, we need to do this before we do this. Oh, to make this work in the system, we need to move this responsibility from person A to person B, because that'll really streamline the flow. So know what your process is, and then see what you can adjust so that it integrates as seamlessly as possible with the way the software can support you. I also really encourage organizations to document your processes. Number one, document your system configuration. I know you guys have talked about data dictionaries, and that's an important part of it. I encourage organizations, if your vendor doesn't give you a blueprint of your system, create one yourself and maintain it. So on this screen, we have these fields. What type is each field? What data goes in that field? If it's a drop-down field, what are the options? Have a paper version of your database that helps you troubleshoot with your vendor, that helps you onboard new users. And when somebody wants to change something, they can go back to your blueprint and be like, "Ooh, if I change the option in this field, it's going to affect that report." So people can see the whole web of your system. And also document changes to the system. If you're the database manager and you disable a form or you create a new form or you hide a field or add a new field, document when you make those changes and why you made those changes, so that later when you need to clean your data or find your data or change a report, you'll remember what you did and why. This is something I need to get better at myself, because oftentimes I'm like, I changed that 6 months ago and I don't remember why. And right now I feel really tempted to change it back, but I know I had a good reason. What was my reason? So document that stuff. And then it's not set it and forget it. I often point out to organizations that a lot of the projects they undertake are also change initiatives that need to be managed as a project and as a change initiative. And implementing a new database, changing a database, that's a significant change initiative. And you can't just drop it in people's laps. Here's your training, here's your manual, and off you go. People need help to adapt, to adopt, to get used to it. At the first time that they encounter a bump in the road, it didn't work the way I thought it was going to work. They need to know how to hang in there with the system, how to learn it, how to adapt to it, how to improve it. One of the organizations I worked with recently had so many manual workarounds because the first time a staff person said, well, it can't do this. It can't do it the way I need to do it. So I created my spreadsheet. The fact of the matter is the system could do it. It just required a little digging, a little training, a little rethinking about our process. So you have to monitor staff's experiences when they're using the system and monitor the process. Are people following through the steps as intended? And then the biggest piece of this, of course, are the people themselves. And sometimes organizations get so focused on the software and the project that they overlook the very human component that will determine the system's success. Just curious, have any of you heard of the human stack or follow Tim Lockey on LinkedIn? I'm just looking for hands raised or anything. I encourage you to check that out. If this is something that's sparking excitement in your brain, if this is resonating with you, Tim Lockey and his organization, the Human Stack, really focus on developing manageable and people-centered tools and processes to manage technology and data in nonprofits. They focus on supporting what they call the accidental techie or the voluntold. Uh-oh, I'm the database manager. What do I do with that? And they focus a lot on how to acknowledge and support the human aspects of technology in nonprofits. So I encourage you to check them out. It's the Human Stack. So when I'm talking about the importance of people in database management, I'm talking both about your leaders and your users. As I mentioned before, I believe every organization needs to designate a system manager or administrator for every data tool they use. Another organization I was working with recently uses Google Workspace. And so they have shared drives. No one had the responsibility for overseeing and managing their shared drive. It was the wild, wild west, and it was a hot mess. First of all, they didn't know that when you have an enterprise instance of Google Workspace, that there are shared drives across the organization. They weren't using those. They were using individuals' drives, and individuals were creating files and sharing files with individuals. So they had no folder structure, they had no file naming taxonomy. It was a hot mess because no one was in charge of it and no one had created any rules or policies. So yes, you need to have someone to manage your Apricot or your ETO or your Blackbaud, but you also need to have someone to manage your spreadsheets, your Google Drive, those things too. And make sure, as I said before, that those leaders have the authority that they need to hold people accountable to following processes and procedures. And these folks need to also be able to cultivate culture. So this is why I mentioned social capital can be so important. If your database manager is a data geek from outside the organization who's really techie and is really good at the database itself, but not so good at interfacing with the database users, I think you're going to struggle. You need someone who can speak both and can cultivate a culture and translate between your service providers and your frontline folks and your evaluation folks and your data folks. So I encourage organizations to ask which people, not a single person, will have responsibility for supporting and monitoring the system use and data quality. The users themselves need to have a consistent onboarding process. I encourage organizations to have an onboarding manual or a recorded onboarding training so you make sure that every user hears and sees the same information. And then after that, there needs to be ongoing training and refreshers as new features and functions come out, as you're reviewing data quality and realizing people are skipping this field, people are misusing that field. I created this report, but nobody has run it in 6 months. Oh, one of my clients, she's the director of program evaluation at a large nonprofit, and she's also their database manager, has been working so hard to create some really cool dashboards and reports for programs. And she is onboarding new users and doing trainings. And she was doing a refresher training the other day. And in the training, she demoed for the 4th or 5th time a report that had been on their dashboard for 8 months. No one had seen it. They loved it. They were thrilled. They had no idea it was there, but it had been there for 8 months. She was both heartbroken that no one had been using it for 8 months, but she was thrilled that they finally had the aha moment because then someone said, "Oh my God, ETO is my friend. ETO can help me." She's like, "Yes, ETO could have been helping you for the last 8 months." So ongoing training and refreshers can be very helpful, ongoing communication. And then I alluded to this earlier, but I really encourage organizations to equip and empower users to participate in problem solving. And this is something that Tim Lockey talks a lot about. Is yes, a lot of organizations will have a support ticket system. Oh my gosh, there's a bug on this form, or I got this error message. But when it's a problem about configuration, this is too many clicks. This is in the wrong place. I need this to pre-populate that. Create a space or a mechanism for your users to participate in problem solving. Don't let them get to a point of feeling powerless and frustrated, so they just throw up their hands and be like, look, I don't understand this thing. I don't know how it works. I'm going to create my spreadsheet over here. Whether it's a team or a committee, whether it's quarterly feedback sessions, whatever it is, create an opportunity for users to say, hey, I'm using it this way. It would be cool. It would be so much better for me if it worked more like this. How could we achieve that together? Then they have a sense of ownership, and it kind of chips away at some of that intimidation and that otherness that can happen, where they feel like it's a me versus the database situation. So I encourage organizations to think about, how does our team feel about evaluation and data? And how can we change attitudes, behaviors, and infrastructure to support our users in using the system? So throughout the slides, I've had these questions at the end. This is what I work with organizations. These are the questions I work with them to answer before we start shopping for a database. So I encourage you guys to use these as kind of a gut check if your organization is thinking about making a change or is experiencing some of those pain points. And don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, because usually there's so much that can be accomplished by clarifying program questions, improving processes, and supporting people. I want to share a few resources with you, and then we'll open up for questions or just commiseration if anyone would like to do that as well. I believe you got the PDF of the slides, so you have this as a clickable link, but I've also got some QR codes on the next slides. This is our website, insightsintoimpact.com. Under the resources tab, there's two things there. There's our blog, Igniting Insights, and then there's a page of guides and tools. And these are links to some of our favorite free downloadable resources on the web. And as far as our blog goes, these are bite-sized tips and tools around a variety of topics. These are some of the ones related to database and database management that you might be interested in. This QR code will take you to our blogs page, and if you want to, there you can subscribe and you can see these. But you can also see to the right here all of these categories. So we write about cultures of learning, data evaluation, evaluative thinking, process management. So we've got a bunch of good stuff on there. And they are meant to be practical, bite-sized, and encouraging. And I use a lot of humor and sarcasm. So for those of you who sometimes feel frustrated in your work, or evaluation is not your colleague's favorite thing, you can come to our blog and feel validated. You're not alone. And then we also have a quarterly newsletter where we'll highlight some upcoming events and offerings. We are in the process of developing a 3-hour version of this workshop that should be offered in the spring online. And we'll also be developing a blog series on this topic in addition to the blogs linked on the previous page. So if you want to hear more about this stuff or get a little more into the details, you can check that out as well. And then you've got my contact information. I'm happy to be a thought partner if anybody has a specific question or concern. I'm happy to be a resource for that. So I'm going to stop sharing and open it up for any questions or comments. I apologize. I cannot monitor the chat while I'm presenting. I can't. I can't. So I haven't been seeing what's going on.
No worries, Sarah. First of all, thank you. This has been an incredible presentation, and as you're looking through the comments, you'll definitely see that that was felt in the shared sentiment throughout the group. Kamari Brewer did have to hop off, but they did have one question to kick things off. They want to know specifically if there are any tools for nonprofits to ensure the planning phase has been done, specifically if it's been done well.
Okay, good question. I have implored different software vendors over the years to develop these tools as pre-work for their clients. Because if organizations haven't done this work and they jump into database implementation and they encounter problems down the road, they're just going to blame the software. So I've told the vendors, like, this is going to make you look bad, if you build software systems for people who aren't ready. So some of them, as part of their implementation process or their discovery process, will have templates that they ask you to fill out where you articulate your reporting requirements, where you articulate your evaluation plans. And so that can be helpful pre-work. We also have templates for some of those things that I'd be happy to share. For example, we have a template for a performance management plan. We have a template for a data collection outline, which is kind of that blueprint that I mentioned. So in many cases, a good evaluation plan, a good logic model, a data dictionary, those are great tools to require this thinking. So that can go a long way. Process maps, procedures as well.
Thank you. There is another comment from Laura Smalley, and she was saying that they recently underwent the process of finding a new database system, and she wished she had this information. So that actually brought a question I had to mind. So knowing the realities is that we don't live in the ideals of having this before we undergo a massive planning opportunity for this. So is there any advice you would give to nonprofits who maybe have already committed to a database, who maybe already 2-3 years or even a few months in? And now they're realizing on the back end, okay, we definitely focus on what's going in and not what's coming out. Any like immediate things for them to focus on and how they can still work with what they have, but not
Sure.
feel
Sure.
devastated or like all hope is lost.
Sure. Well, all hope is not lost. It can be messy. Because here's the thing, we're continuing to deliver services and collect data while we want to reorganize our data. That's a hot mess. That's not avoidable. But what I will say is I encourage you to do it one program or department at a time. Don't try to do it agency-wide. Attack it when you have a lull in services. So if you do school year programming or seasonal programming, be very thoughtful and intentional about the timing of when you want to take a second look at these things. I would say be collaborative. So involve the perspectives of different service providers, managers, directors, all folks who need to interact with the database in a different way. And first elicit what's working and what's not working. And you need to prioritize the opportunities for improvement. And so if there's a particular form that's most troublesome, or you have lots of opportunities, I would think about what's impacting the most number of system users, what's impacting the most critical data, and what's impacting your ability to learn and report on your most important questions. And that's what I would prioritize. And then I would just be as thoughtful as you can before you start making changes. Because a lot of databases are held together with duct tape and bubble gum because we've taken them apart and put them back together so many times. And that just erodes your data quality each time you do it. So I would say find time to be thoughtful and to go slow and to be collaborative.
Thank you so much. I know we've gotten a few comments in the chat, so just a brief reminder, folks, we are recording and we will more than happy to share the recording as well as the slide decks from both presenters today. Also for folks, if you have to hop off but you have a question, please feel free to put it in the chat. We'll make sure that we answer it on the call so you can get the recording of the answer if you have to go. We do have another question from Josephine Ingalls, and they would like to know and I know this may be a varied response, so I'll tee it up with that first, but what should a nonprofit plan to spend on support hours to upkeep a Salesforce system? And I'll add to that, if not a specific dollar amount, which can be hard to kind of ballpark, what are things to kind of help them kind of understand what to consider when making that ballpark estimate?
Sure. Okay, so I absolutely cannot put numbers on that for a few reasons. because one, no two Salesforce systems are the same because it's so highly customizable. So it depends entirely on the size and complexity of your system. Number two, I can't put a number on that because Salesforce is implemented by third-party implementers, and they all have their own fee schedules, and some of them are outrageous. In general, I really caution organizations when they're getting into the Salesforce environment because the customizability of it, the flexibility of it can be really intoxicating. We can make it do whatever we want it to do. Organizations have a tendency to overbuild their Salesforce implementations. It's like you go to the buffet and your eyes are bigger than your stomach and you just get so excited by all the things you see and you pile it on your plate, and then you go to sit down and you're really like, my salad dressing is running into my pasta and this is now cold and I'm full. It's the same thing with Salesforce. And so I've seen a number of organizations get themselves into way in over their heads with costs and also human resources required to manage Salesforce implementation. So I can't put a dollar amount on it, but it can be, in my experience, one of the more costly systems to maintain because of the customizability.
Analogy so much of comparing to a buffet. I think sometimes the world we live in, we can definitely overconsume and overindulge, right? So sometimes we're thinking more is more in a good way, and sometimes more is just a lot more to sift through and not necessarily what I need at the
That's right.
moment.
That's right.
I do have another question for you. So, as we're talking specifically more so about the people aspect of this work, as you've alluded to and really have actually very bluntly called out, there's a lot of change management that goes into undergoing and kind of creating an entirely new database process. So, are there any tips or thoughts you can give to everyone as it pertains to change management with your people folk as you're going through this new process?
Yeah. So different folks will react differently to the announcement that we're making a technology transition or a significant investment in technology. I really encourage those who are leading those projects to do their best to anticipate the anxiety and the fears and to preemptively address it so people feel heard, they feel acknowledged, and they don't feel like they have to kind of suffer in silence or go along with. I also encourage organizations that when you're putting together these teams, include supporters and skeptics. If there is someone in your organization who really hates technology or who is really in love with the current system and is really resistant to change, but they're still a good collaborator and a teammate, put them on the project team so that you're constantly getting, the devil's advocate or an alternative point of view. And that way also, if they come to support the end product, that'll give it some credibility. As I said, I encourage collaborative teams when you're selecting and designing these systems. I encourage you to have people on the team from different levels of your organizational chart, so it never feels like it's something that's coming from the top down. Have some frontline folks who get a chance to have input, who get to sit in on a demo, ask them what their needs and wishes are for the system. And then I would over-communicate, and provide lots of opportunities for people to share their feelings and their reactions, because you have to manage people's anxiety just as much as you have to manage the system. And on that, I really recommend John Cotter's book, Leading Change. One of the things that he says early on in any change initiative is to create a sense of urgency. So if there are people who are really invested in the way we do things now and who are really resistant to change, you have to help them figure out what's in it for them. You have to create a sense of urgency in them to want to make the shift and to make a change. How is this going to make their job easier? How is this going to make their clients more successful? How is this going to make the organization more successful? You have to find out what's in it for them.
Oh, I absolutely love the inclusion of having your skeptics involved too. I think a lot of times we're undergoing this big change, it can be a lot. And then the last thing we may want to hear is someone who's going to be pushing against, someone who's always going to have like, but this or oh, what about that? But you need that to help push and drive and open up new discussions and different points of conversation that you may not consider otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
And then that also reminds me of something you said earlier too about creating space for your users to participate in problem solving. It reminds me of something we do so much in the nonprofit space of really creating those community conversations when you want to hear from the communities that you're working with and working in to making sure that they're included in the services that you're providing. But I feel like internally that's something that can oftentimes go miss. So I'm thinking about it of creating that community conversation with your users, with the individuals experiencing this, just as we would be inclusive of our communities that we're actually serving externally.
Exactly.
We do have another question in the chat, and it is one from Linda Rucker. They've asked, do you provide consulting for nonprofits going through a data planning and database selection process? So this is your time to plug and share anything
Yes.
you want to in that space.
Yes, I sure do. We call them our data strategy services, and we can support organizations in just assessing their current data management tools. We just did one of those recently. We will sit down with you to identify your evaluation and learning questions, what questions you want to be able to answer with your data. We will tour your existing tools and processes and interview your staff about what's working and not working. We can review and help you map and improve your processes. Our deliverable from that discovery phase is a report of your data management requirements that you can then take yourself and give to vendors as part of your RFP. And then we can also support the shopping process where we will go and research vendors, we'll do the demos, we'll present to you 2, 3, 4 options to consider. We'll support you in your decision making. And then once a vendor has been selected, we can also provide implementation support kind of as a liaison or a translator and a project manager between you and your vendor, because the vendors are often in selling mode. You're often in survival mode. They're speaking tech language, you're speaking social work language, and we stand in the middle and translate.
That's the perfect question to end on. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up our QR code just to give us feedback so we can continue from hearing from everyone. But I'll still be monitoring the chat just in case any other questions trickle in while everyone is completing the QR code.
Right.
But in the meantime, if everyone could please give a very, very, very major thank you to both Sarah and Michelle for providing so much incredible, rich, and just insightful information today. Both ladies, you did phenomenal and just giving a lot of helpful information today. Getting a ton of thank yous. So taking that as a great sign, and hopefully that's reflected in the feedback. All right, we're not getting any other questions in the chat. I'll leave the QR code up for about another minute. I'll also send it out in our recap with everything else because I know a few folks had to hop off a little early today. But that's all we have, folks. So unless you have any other questions, you're more than welcome to come off mute, put it in the chat. I'll be hanging out. Jessica and I will be hanging out. Michelle, Sarah, if you're able to stay just a couple more minutes before we end. Other than that, we'll be wrapping up shortly. All right, folks, that has been 1 minute. So thank you all so very much again for attending, participating, engaging, the full works, the whole shebang. And again, thank you so much, Michelle and Sarah. We absolutely loved and adored everything you both shared today. But without further ado, we'll go ahead and call it the end.